Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We request that we move forward, move to where there's water, so that when you feel thirsty, you can easily get a bottle. Okay. It's a nice day that we are finalizing our conference. Our keynote speaker is ready for us, and we are expecting more participants to arrive. And before we start, we want to request Professor to pray for us.
Good. Let's pray. Gracious, loving Father, we want to thank you. We want to bless your name this morning for giving us this day as a day that, Lord, we will be glad and glorify your name. Jehovah, we have been here for the last 2 days, and today is the last day. And we ask thee this morning that thou may grant us strength, peace of mind, wisdom, understanding as we go through this session, Lord. I want to pray for our members who are still on the way, Lord, that may thou quicken their ways, O God, that we may start together. I want to plead the blood of the Lamb, O God, upon each one of us, Jehovah. And we pray this morning that, Lord, it's only you that has made us to see this day. And as we begin, Lord, may we begin with you, Jehovah. May your wisdom come down, strengthen the speakers of this day, O God. Until we end, Jehovah, may your name be glorified. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
It's the final day for our conference, and I can see a lot of people have not turned up. Already here, and start and continue with the program as planned. I will invite our keynote speaker, who is currently based in Cameroon. His profile is quite a long one, and if I have to go through the whole profile, it will be a full presentation. So I will pick some aspects of the profile that will clearly define who this is. Just 1 minute, and we will be there with you. I'm introducing Dr. Saliu Niasi, who has been the president of the African Association of Insect Scientists for about 2 terms. Previously, he held other positions in the association. It's a Africa-wide association dealing with insect science. Dr. Saliu has been head of technology transfer at the ICP for many years. And recently, he was called to lead the African Union Inter-Africa Phytosanitary Council based in Cameroon. He is a widely published author, scientific author. He has more than 100 publications to his credit in peer-reviewed articles, books, and chapters in books. I have worked with Dr. Saliu for many years in the African Association of Insect Scientists, where we run conferences every 2 years, rotating in African countries. And he has proved to be a wonderful leader in insect science, bringing together scientists from all over Africa, working together with the donors, and creating networks that solve African insect problems. I've just called Dr. Saliu in a few minutes ago. I was expecting him to present from Cameroon, but he came closer. He's in Addis Ababa, attending meetings of the African Union. So he will be presenting to us from Addis Ababa. Welcome, Dr. Saliu. This is Rongo University Interdisciplinary Research Conference. This is the final day, and we are going to give you time to present, and then people will ask questions and comments. Okay, I'm told Dr. Saliu has not joined yet. When I talked to him a few minutes ago, he was on the way joining. Let me just call him again. Waiting for host to log me in. There's a message like that. Can you? I sent. You've resent? Okay. I had sent him. Yeah, let me forward. Try again. He has seen it. Once he comes online, we'll start. In the meantime, we are warming up to Thimlich Ohinga, World Heritage Site. I have just been in touch with the curator, and they are expecting us. The curator will join us from here, from where he will give us a brief, and then he will join us. We'll travel together to Thimlich Ohinga. So we request those who are traveling to Thimlich Ohinga to register their names. Just give your name to the secretariat so that for planning purposes we know how many people are coming to Thimlich Ohinga. There's some element of facilitation to be done so that we send the records of how many people we are that are going to attend to that visit. I can see Dr. Saliu is there. Dr. Saliu, bonjour. He can't hear me yet. Can you hear me? Saliu, can you hear? Can you hear? We still can't get. Can you talk?
Can you talk? Can you talk?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, we can hear you now. I have already done the introduction, but I think I'll summarize the introduction that I did about you. There's some echo. How we switch off this? Hello? Okay, I've switched it off. I've done an introduction, but I will do a summary of the introduction again, because Dr. Saliu was not online with us. I said earlier on that Dr. Saliu is a research scientist. For a long time, he has been heading the Technology Transfer Unit at the ICIPE, the International Center for Insect Physiology and Ecology, where I happen to have worked before I joined the academia. Dr. Saliu has created a lot of networks for technology transfer in Africa and led many programs on technology transfer in Africa, linking with the donors and creating networks. Recently, as from January, Dr. Saliu was called to head the African Union Inter-Africa Phytosanitary Council, with the headquarters in Cameroon, Yaoundé, Cameroon. This program serves the African Union in all African countries. Dr. Saliu, I said that his profile, if I had to go through his profile, it will take a full presentation of probably 2 to 3 hours. So I've given a summary of his profile, and we welcome Dr. Saliu to present to us, giving a keynote address. He's currently presenting from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Welcome, Dr. Saliu. Karibu. Dr. Saliu happens to speak some very good Kiswahili and a bit of Dholuo. I will not challenge him to try that now. Welcome, Dr. Saliu.
When I'm invited, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. It is always a pleasure for me academic forum. So I have been thinking about the type of presentation I would give for this event, but then I had to go back to my area of expertise, which is technology transfer, and maybe come up with a title such as Scaling Up Insect-Based Technologies in a One Health Approach in Africa. So if you are living on this continent, you may hear people talking about Africa and depicting a picture such as malnutrition, food insecurity, an agricultural sector that is not performing because it is unable to feed its people. All around the world, it's only in the African country that you have statistically about 1 out of 4 people, considered as hungry. Our agriculture is not able to generate, resources to pull the continent forward. And all this is because of several factors, mainly insect pest and disease, climate change, and you may be witnessing with me the political instability that is taking place all over the continent, particularly in West Africa, but also in East Africa and Sudan. All over the continent we have political instability, and if you look deeper, the reason why there is political instability is simply because people are not able to find food, and food is generated by agriculture. So one of the reasons why our agriculture is not performing is because since after the World War II, a lot of agricultural technologies have been developed, starting from chemical pesticide, irrigation systems, fertilizers, and several others that have led to what we call the Green Revolution. But in the case of Africa, you will see that these technologies that are being researched by our scientists, by our academians, are not necessarily adopted by the farmers. And because the farmers, they usually have weak local tenure system, poor incentive, poor access to credit. Sometimes the new technologies do not meet farmers' criteria. Farmers are also risk averse. They don't like to take risk because they don't want to jeopardize their harvest. Sometimes they are not even aware of what type of research or innovations are being developed, like the research that is being done at ICIPE, in IITA or CABI. Very few farmers in Africa are aware, and we can really confirm that it is the case. And most of the research that we do are usually shelved, and we have weak extension systems. Our extension people in Africa, you will have like one extension person for 10,000 farmers. This is impossible, and those extension services are not trained. Not only they don't have good salaries, they are not trained, and they are not able to really to help the many smallholder farmers. And if you want to move a technology that was developed in Kenya, for instance, to Uganda or to neighboring countries, it's also a lot of issues, a lot of problems, And then we have so many boundaries in Africa. We are talking about 55 member states. Some of them are English-speaking, others are French-speaking, others are Arabic, others are Portuguese. All this, coupled with weak policies, obsolete policies, and makes really the technology adoption become very complicated. So if we want to achieve a green revolution in Africa like it has been achieved in Asia or in South America, then we need to really invest in technologies, in technology transfer that is innovative, and so that we can protect food security, create employment, improve productivity, create jobs, and improve the overall livelihood of people in Africa. So the reason why I chose insect-based technologies is because, the impact of insect in our life is far-reaching. Every aspect of life we think about, there is somewhere an insect that is affecting, our life. And that is why more and more people are shifting from the 4H paradigm to now a new paradigm called One Health. Because before, people in medical entomology used to focus on malaria, forgetting that the same farmer who is catching malaria needs his livestock also to produce food, and the livestock can be affected by tsetse fly, whereby, if the animals are not well, then the same farmer who is catching malaria is not able to perform. And then the same mosquito needs pollen from the plants. Of course, during blooming, a lot of mosquitoes feed themselves with pollen. And then you have this interconnectedness between the environment, the animals, the plant, and the human. And that's why you're talking about One Health. But insects themselves form one of the, it is the largest group in the animal kingdom. More than 1.4 million species. Some people even mention about 1.8 million. Only 1.4 have been described. So whether you are in the field of animal health, human health, plant health, you have to deal with insects. And that is why this talk is dedicated to insects, and they affect our agricultural system in so many ways. So when I was at ICIPE, I came up with this approach for technology transfer. I tested basically for a period of 7 years how to disseminate technologies in Africa, especially if you are a scientist and you have technologies that are knowledge intensive. Because some of our technologies are not like, are not as simple as that. They follow what we call biological processes. So I first thought that it's very important that we inventory these technologies, create a database for them, first of all. And then secondly, we have to package them. Some technologies are compatible, some are synergistic, and then once you have done that, then you move to communication and capacity building. And then you have to build now a strategic partnership, because as one entity, you cannot single-handedly, disseminate a technology across the continent. And then within the technology transfer itself, you also need to conduct research to understand the dissemination pathways. Because for the same technology, whether you are with a pastoralist or you are with fishermen or with pure farmers, that's not the same approach that you will use to disseminate them. And these are the 5 programmatic areas. And in each programmatic areas, I identified 3 activities that goes with each programmatic area. And in the next slides, I will explain more or less with concrete examples how each of these programmatic area has been engaged over a 7-year period of tech transfer that I have, been involved. First of all, before you start talking about technology transfer in Africa, you have to understand the continent. It's been nearly 15 years. I had the opportunity to be almost all over the continent and have been involved in African associations of insect scientists, starting as an ordinary member, and also went to be a president and organized over 10 conferences in different African countries. My impression is that Africa is extremely diverse. We have several climatic zones, we have a lot of cultural diversity, and we need also to understand this if you want actually to move technologies across Africa. And this is most of the time what we are lacking, because most of our technocrats and engineers have been trained in Europe and America or China, and then whatever knowledge they have learned there, they want to implement it in Africa without understanding the cultural context. That is why it is a privilege to have been trained in Africa and been in Africa all along. So once you have understood that, then you have to understand the chain for technology development. First of all, a technology has to be, first of all, discovered. And then once it is discovered by the innovator, then you have to, pilot it, to establish a proof of concept in the lab. Then you pilot to validate it. Once you have validated it, then you can start now thinking of scaling it. The scaling can be to expand it to as many countries as possible. Let's say, for instance, you have had an innovation in Kenya, and then you want to have that innovation expanded to Uganda, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and the neighboring countries up to Rwanda and almost, globally. But then there is also another level of scaling, whereby as an inventor, you want the technology to move from your hands to the private sector and then to the company that manufactures it, and then give license to companies to manufacture and make money out of it and return back the money to the university or to the institution, where you are working at. So there are those two kind of level of scalings. So classically, most of us are involved in what we call demonstration, field trials, demonstration field days, farmer field school. But again, there is also the option whereby you can go work in the national radios with NGOs and then promote your technology, make a long documentary on YouTube that few people will view. These are the classical way. You can also come up with a lot of materials, information, educative materials, a lot of pamphlets, brochures, and booklets that are distributed across, and perhaps have a website. This is a classical way of dissemination and outreach. It has been implemented in several institutions, but never made its proof, as in change the condition of the farmers. So, for instance, when we were at ISIPE and many other organizations, we usually have these booklets that are being circulated. And every year you have to print the same. But you are not able to get the feedback or to track whether people are adopting or using your technologies. I also came up with the concepts because now, this is now about innovation. Luckily, we are living in an era where information technologies are fairly well developed. 20 years ago, in the 2000s, there were not so many people who had mobile phones. There was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, there was no LinkedIn. It was not as developed as it is now. But today, if you want to do technology transfer, considering mobile penetration in so many countries, you have to come up with new systems, which is now the farm studio concept. If you on YouTube, you will find a lot of materials. Remember, when I was introducing this topic, I was mentioning that there is a lot of borders in Africa. But with YouTube, the same people, whether you are in Rwanda or Zimbabwe or in Botswana, you can access the same information. So building a library where farmers can access to technologies is much more innovative, because they don't have to wait for government to decide or policies to come or extension service to come to their place. They can have access to the technologies right there, wherever they are, as long as they key in the right information on YouTube or on several other platforms. So this is, for instance, an exercise that we have started when I was at ISIPE. And if you go today on ISIPE channel, you will see a lot of series on black soldier fly production, or on beekeeping, or on how to control fall armyworm, etc., or fruit fly. And at your back end, where you are seated in your office, you can now see the metrics, how people are watching your videos, and what series they prefer, what aspect of it they prefer, and you can see the geographics, the gender, and plus they can give you feedback about how they feel about your technology, whether it is successful or helpful or not. So this was not there before in the classical way of doing technology transfer. And today you can create WhatsApp groups. Like currently as we speak, there is a project running in 3 countries, in Zambia, Malawi, and Uganda. And we have built WhatsApp group for each country, and a WhatsApp group that combines all 3 countries. So you can see and make countries compete. For instance, Zambians, they don't want to see Malawians doing the work better than them. And likewise, the Ugandans don't want to see Zambians and Malawians doing better than them. So you create a sort of a competition between the farmers, whereby a farmer can go to his own farm, take pictures of how he is implementing the technology that you have trained him, and show to other farmers how he is doing it. And this now you couple it with a farmer exchange program, and then you can improve technology uptake. So for instance, this is Agricultural Expo that is also very useful, because here you bring the policymakers, the ministers, the investors, and they can get to see how it looks like, the technology that you have been publishing on your research papers. Because most of us believe that it's only when you have published your work, it's only when you have published your work that you have been successful. No. Once you have discovered something, you need now to take it to the farmer. And unless you show it to the farmers, they have the opportunity to touch it and to feel it, they will not feel that they have learned something from your research. And this is where the discourse is. We need to really break that element whereby we content ourselves and beat our chest and say we have made it simply because we have published a paper in Nature. No. This research has now to go and transform the lives of the farmers. But these are examples of how we do it. But then, when you do technology transfer, something like insect-based technologies, as I said, insect-based technologies are usually knowledge-intensive. Now you need to include all aspects of gender, the young people, the old people, the men and the women. So this is all called gender, balance. So cartoon books are very useful because most of our communities are illiterate. You don't understand how far people are illiterate, but if you watch some of the comedians who just walk in the street and give people a mic to ask them about simple things, you realize that majority of our people are not educated or they are not literate. But if you give a chance to children to go and explain to their parents, that you are making a bigger impact, which is why cartoon books are very useful. Another very important thing is to create a science forum. I have been, and I'm still doing it anyway, and Prof. Zach is also one of our guests. Hopefully soon we will have this program. It's called Lecture Series, which is to give the chance for scientists, wherever they are in Africa, to share their research with other scientists, create a forum. So I've been giving these lectures, but all these are different lectures that have been taking place within the forum of the African Association of Insect Scientists, so that we make sure that South African researchers are sharing their knowledge with Cameroonians, and then Cameroonians are sharing their research with Kenyans, and people from Israel or from America also bringing in their expertise on diverse subjects. And that way we contribute, to creating some form of leadership. Engaging with people, because for the longest time, we have always been thinking that it is the smallholder farmers who is our customer as researchers. But actually, our customers are the citizens of the country. There are so many citizens in Kenya who are interested in investing in agriculture, but they don't have the information, they don't know where the problems are. You find a lot of IT guys or lawyers who want to have, poultry farms, or they want to have dairy cows, but they don't have access to information. People who have the money and who can really change the game. But for the longest time, we have always been wanting to bring in this poverty business, giving agriculture a very, not compelling face, and a lot of young people don't want to engage in agriculture. But the idea is to make agriculture sexy enough so that we can retain our talent, can retain our prevent brain drain, and keep the youth on the continent. Now, let me talk about examples. This is what it means. It is about combining below economic thresholds. This has been done on fruit fly, this has been done on fall armyworm, this has been done on tuta absoluta, where people combine the use of parasitoids, the use of biopesticide, the use of pheromone traps, etc., and orchard sanitations. So these technologies, one has to sit and draw it on your notebook nicely, whereas you think of different aspects. Once you have drawn it, then you design it, in a very meaningful way, whereby there is a kind of a circular but also a logical flow. And then you start putting very interesting charts, to identify where the gains are. Where is it the farmer? What's in it for the farmer? It's very beautiful to say that your technology contributes to reducing hunger. But how does it contribute to reducing hunger? When you say that your technology prevent poverty, how does it really contribute in reducing poverty? So you have to really draw these chart flows for every innovation that you come up with. And then from there, you design an action plan. For instance, let me give you an example. There was, you hear all talking about the black soldier fly. The black soldier fly being, an insect that is able to degrade any organic waste stream into protein, maggots for chickens or pigs or fish, and then produce some form of frass that can be used for vegetable gardening. But the black soldier fly in itself alone cannot be enough for the chicken. The chickens need, they are monogastric, they need also plant-based protein. So one of the innovations we came up with was to really come up with desmodium, which is a legume. That desmodium contains amino acids that are different from the black soldier fly that contain a different types of amino acid. So the combination of the plant-based protein and the animal-based protein makes it a more complete protein for the chickens. And by combining that, we fed 4 different types of chicken. One basically with the A, basically was fed with the conventional feed. The B was fed with 75% desmodium, 25% black soldier fly. The C was fed with 50% and 50%, and then the D was fed with 75% black soldier fly. And this is how we demonstrated the quality of chickens that we are getting by just feeding them on these different feed. But guess what happens is that by getting the plant-based protein, we have been able to reduce the chicken production up to 50 to 75%, which means where the farmer was gaining only 1 shilling, he is probably going to gain maybe 10 shillings more. So cutting down the cost of production by nearly 75% just by using the plant-based protein combined with black soldier fly. This, and beyond that, we have also been able to demonstrate that the chicken quality, the meat that you get, it's closer to the Kenyeji kind of meat. And simply because you are feeding the chickens with a high quality protein, the taste of the chicken was even more compelling for the people who have been able to test it. So here you are contributing to solving a problem, because we know that chicken production is very, very competitive, and feed is one of the most crucial elements in chicken production. Another very exciting experience is, I know maybe some of you have heard about the push-pull technology. So we decided to disseminate the push-pull technology in Rwanda. So on this map, all the green dots that you see are farmholds, households that have adopted the push-pull technology in 2 different districts, Nyagatare and Jasibo. But we don't understand, after we have trained them, what are the drivers for them to adopt the push-pull technology, because it is very important to understand those drivers. So we use what we call the global Moran's eye, which is a process where you basically try to come up with the minimum distance from which you have some kind of spatial correlation. We were able to demonstrate that using K-mean clustering, that farmers who are between 2.3 kilometers away from each other are likely to influence their decision-making power. So it is a way to basically understand in a community, in a given community, how do you disseminate and what are the elements that play in the decision-making. We found that within a radius of 2 kilometers, for instance, improved seeds is a very important thing. If you disseminating a technology but giving them, for the push-pull, giving them improved seeds, you will definitely contribute in the adoption of the technology. If you give them household income, if, for instance, household income is improved, then they will definitely adopt your technology. So what this research has enabled us to do as dissemination specialists is that for this technology called push-pull in Rwanda, we have to need to use what we call a non-equilibrium promotion strategy, okay? Because there is what we call a spatial spillover. If you strain 1 to 10 farmers, those 1 to 10 farmers are able to pull 10 more farmers in addition, as long as you understand some of these drivers of dissemination. Another example is what we call the evidence-based decision-making. So here, it's about the fall armyworm. We run a project where we were collecting data on the adult and the female. And these data over a season have enabled us to come up with risk maps. And these risk maps have helped private sector, stakeholder politicians to anticipate the problem. Most importantly, we have been able to model some of these technology and come up with policies such as, if countries decided that all farmers will intercrop their maize with vegetables like beans or groundnuts, then they would fill what we call the so-called yield gap. If they adopted the push-pull technology, they would surpass by far their production. Unfortunately, such policies are not taken. Now, my last slide is about indigenous knowledge. When you are disseminating insect-based technologies in Africa, you should not forget that farmers have been in this business longer than you think, and they have also their own knowledge. It's not about coming to impose them your knowledge, but you need to see how their knowledge fits in with your science-based knowledge, even to go to an extent to evidence some of their knowledge, because they don't have maybe the scientific protocols, but they are sure that their knowledge works. This is the case of the rabbit urine. A lot of farmers, when the fall armyworm came in Africa, if you go to Tanzania and some parts of Kenya, you will see farmers using rabbit urine to control these pests. Well, we did the study at ISIPE. One of my students came up with this research. We demonstrated the dose-response effect of the rabbit urine, and we demonstrated that the farmers were right, that using rabbit urine, they are able to control the fall armyworm larvae. And the other one is the fish soup. Fish smells, especially the omena fish. But the smell, the way that it smells, it attracts a lot of ants and a lot of wasps. And these wasps, when they come to your field, they can help to get rid of the pests that are attacking your maize. So these are some of the indigenous technologies that are out there, but you should not come and disregard this knowledge from the farmers. You need to acknowledge it and need to integrate it within your system, and your technology transfer strategy. So let me just conclude on this one. We have to accept that the research that we have been doing for the very, very long time has not been able to impact too much the continent. This is 20 years of analysis of how the push-pull IPM has impacted the continent. And we have demonstrated that on this paper that this is the IPM package. It goes from natural enemies, use of traps, use of male annihilation and all that. But we have not been able to really satisfy the needs of the farmers, because 300 experts on the continent estimate that 14% are not aware, insufficient training, lack of access, and all these are problems that we are facing, and we need to change that. We need to invest more in showing people basically what is it we are doing and what's in it for them. When we talk about edible insects, we don't even think of how many insects we have and how many insect countries are sharing. Here on this graph, I'm showing you how DRC is having the biggest chunks of insect together with Congo, and how it is sharing insect with other countries like Kenya and other countries in West Africa. We need to do this innovative way of thinking of our technologies and give pictures and make stories around what we are doing, so that there is more awareness. So I have demonstrated through this talk that the different aspects that I mentioned, the approach of technology transfer, that each of any of these activities matters if you want to really promote insect-based technologies. They are not simple. It's not like taking a mobile phone and sending M-Pesa, but they follow biological processes which are sometimes very difficult for farmers to catch, and therefore you have to use a lot of innovation. So in conclusion, scaling insect-based technology requires innovative approach. Beyond training and developing of material, we need to be cautious about the feedback of the end users. We have to create awareness. We are not disseminating technology, but we are also disseminating science. And we have to provide space for scientists to talk about their science. Just like the soccer players are doing the AFCONs, the scientists also should come up with their AFCON, where they have to honor and give awards to each other and motivate each other to come up with more relevant innovations that are going to change the life of people. We have to take into consideration that we have this digital approach, which is different from the print approach. Digital approach is really make it easy for people to access technology wherever they are. And we should not ignore African indigenous knowledge, because this knowledge has been tested by the farmers and is likely going to be adopted. And it is also very cheap to them. And if you combine it with the science, we can come up with more powerful tools. So thank you for listening. I hope I have not been too long. If I have been too long, I apologize.
Thank you, Saliu, for that wonderful...
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hello?
I can hear you, but you can't hear me. Hello?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Have you heard the presentation?
Yes, we've had the presentation very clearly.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Questions?
Thank you very much, Saliu. From where I'm sitting, or where I was sitting before, we have some echo. From switch off this one. Okay. While they are working on the echo, I'll proceed. One is to embrace the One Health paradigm, which will encompass all areas of health in plant health, human health, and animal health for the benefit of the farmers and the people. Another one that I picked was to build a library where farmers can have access to technology. Rongo University has been in the lead for promoting use of media in technology transfer, and we have had several workshops to that effect where the media is invited and they do podcasts and mass media programs that reach the farmers. Another thing that I picked from your lecture was, again, use of mass and social media. Yesterday there were several discussions of use of social media in transferring information. So that just confirms that this is a hot cake. Another thing that I picked from your lecture was the possibility of having annual agriculture expo, which can bring farmers together to exchange ideas and exchange technologies and benchmark from one another so that they can practice these technologies that have been transferred to them. And one very important aspect of your speech towards the end touched on indigenous knowledge. And if I combine that with insect for food and feed, we find that in Africa, so many insects are eaten culturally in many communities, and this has improved the livelihood of people, generating income and improving health and nutrition in the populations. So since you have been involved in these aspects, and since some of these things we see practically, we are happy to invite you in the discussions that will follow so that the members will ask questions and you will respond. After this, we are going to Thimlich Ohinga. Saliu, I don't know if you know what Thimlich Ohinga is. It's a World Heritage Site designated by UNESCO. So normally we go there and take our visitors to relax. After 3 days of presentation, they look at that World Heritage as a tourist attraction. We are planning as Rongo University to work together with the National Museums of Kenya and the Migori County government to start butterfly farming and beekeeping around Thimlich Ohinga for conservation of the environment and for improving ecotourism and agritourism in the area. And the beneficiaries will be the local community, the farmers around that place that will be selling their products, which will be bought as gifts when people visit Thimlich Ohinga. So insect science is going to the ground to Thimlich Ohinga if we sign this memorandum of understanding. And I'm happy to tell you that we are pulling ISIPE to join in that MOU so that we work together in butterfly farming and beekeeping in that project. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Dr. Saliu Nyasi to you for discussion. And as I said before, Saliu has been my president in the African Association of Insect Scientists, where we have worked for many years together. The normal trend was to have a maximum of 2 terms for the executive committee, but due to his good leadership, the association extended so that our team did 3 terms, which is very unusual, and it has never been done except under his leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, questions to Dr. Saliu. Can I see hands if you have a question? Dr. Mosso. We'll take the first 3, Dr. Mosso, Dr. Mbuchi, and then Dr. Adoyo. Then we will take another 3.
Thank you, Prof. Dr. Saliu, bonjour. Thank you so much for a good presentation. I'm Dr. Mosso. I'm a social scientist. And my question is more oriented towards social science. So I've heard you talk about making an innovation or a technology which, after the innovation, it reaches a certain point where you now have to upscale it to the people. And you mentioned that is very critical. You don't stay with the technology. Once you have it, you take it to the people. And sometimes, when you deal with people, you can meet resistance to adapt the new technology that you're pushing to them. Now, my question is, in your hard science research, is there a point where social science takes over? For example, do you apply social change theories at a certain point in your research so that you influence the behavior change of the people? Do you do it individually or you involve social scientists at that point? And the next question is, there are a variety of social change theories. Do you apply them at a certain point? And if you do, please give an example of one that you have found to be very effective in your work. Thank you.
Can I?
I think we'll take the 3 questions first before Dr. Saliu can respond. Next was Dr. Ambuchi, then Dr. Doyo.
Thank you, our keynote speaker, Dr. Saliu, for that wonderful presentation. I want to say that you took us to the technology of BSF, the black soldier fly. And you mentioned about this innovation, and I'm aware the world has really been focusing on the BSF to ensure that we have food for maybe birds and animals and so forth. And this technology has really been advanced. And I think this is in line with the IPCC report that say that food security in this particular time will come from insects. And therefore, there's a lot of research that has gone into black soldier fly. So my question is, apart from black soldier fly, where else are we looking for? Because there's a lot of research that has gone into black soldier fly. Is there another insect that we are focusing on so that we can be able to increase food security? And secondly, you talked about the innovation that has come for food for chicken, where you have included the black soldier fly and some plant-based proteins. Yes, Desmodium. So I wanted to know, apart from the innovations that people have done, because a lot of research has gone into black soldier fly, and you have been behind this particular engine, what else has not been done for the black soldier fly? And all what we get from it and use it for maybe other purposes. Is there any other gap that is remaining, or all has been done? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. I want to focus on One Health. So your presentation has demonstrated clearly there is interaction between human, animals, and the overall environment. And I'm just wondering, given that donor funding is usually vertical in a way, so I've seen you focus so much on agriculture and food production. How then are you incorporating other aspects in the spirit of One Health?
Thank you. We'll allow Saliu to address.
Yes, please, you can come in.
Come in.
Presentation was not possible if there were no social science skills there. Technology transfer is usually led by social scientists or anthropologists. When I talk about understanding African culture and African countries and all that, it is the realm of the anthropologist. And to some extent, you have to work also with social scientists who also have their niche. But everything is not social science. It's also about understanding the biology behind, the biological process behind each technology in order to explain it better, which I know social science can do. So this work has to be done together with expertise from social scientists. However, when it comes to understanding, for instance, to discover some of these science-based process, it requires an entomologist or a chemist, and then when you reach now the level where you have to, let's say, pilot it or to scale it, then that's where you need social scientists who will go to the field and do these usual practices, which we call, can be a baseline survey, can be a knowledge attitude practice, it can be these impact assessments, ante, and all that. But they have also a lot of theories that they also employ. Some of the theories include, for instance, a technology is adopted if the expected benefit, if it is able to recoup, some of the expenditure that have been invested in it, the cost-benefit aspects. If I invest $1 in a technology, am I going to get more than $1? Or the willingness to pay. Those are some of the aspects, or even what we call the premium price. Are they willing, if they are subsidized 25% of the cost of the technology, are they willing to invest the 75%? Or if I give them 50% of the cost, are they willing to give back the other 50% complementary? Those are some of the aspects that have been tested. For instance, you will see that when you take, for instance, the case of the push-pull technology that I'm very familiar with, you will find that most of the farmers are willing to take the push-pull technology once they have been informed about the benefits of the technologies. But then, in the doing, when it comes to do it, because push-pull requires weeding, trimming the companion plant and all that, a lot of farmers drop after the first year of adopting the push-pull technology if they don't see, a significant difference between what they used to be doing and what they are doing now. But you'll find some of the farmers, continue to pick up, the technologies, especially women, when they see that they will get additional forage for their animal, especially during dry season. They see the value in the technology. Therefore, women adopt the push-pull technology more than men. So these are some of the, I could give you many examples. There is also the aspect that they call nudging, whereby you try to nudge the farmers to give them responsibility to adopt and to demonstrate the technology to others. If they fail to do it, then you withdraw and you take back all the credits that you gave them. So those are some of the technologies that have been taking place. I could give you several examples, but I think it will take me a lot of time to explain that. But maybe Zach will give you maybe tangible information. On the second question, apart from black soldier fly, what innovation? What other insects? Okay. True, there has been a lot of funding, a lot of attention, buzz around the black soldier fly. There are other insects also that can do very, prominent job in this field. Let's take the case of mealworms, grasshoppers, crickets. All these insects have also potential. But the particularity of black soldier fly is that it has this ability to degrade several organic waste streams. Backyard manure, kitchen waste, market waste, brewery industrial waste. All these different types of waste can be degraded by the black soldier fly. And during the process of degradation, you get one side the maggots, and on the other side you get the frass, which is high quality frass. And this is why it has become so attractive. But a lot of things is being done with black soldier fly. Actually, there are some ideas even to breed black soldier fly to come up with different breed, because different strains of black soldier fly do not have the same efficiency in terms of degrading waste. So there is research that is being conducted to compare the different strains and come up and select some of the strains that are highly effective. There's also work around the kiting aspect, which comes from the exuvia of the black soldier fly, because that chitin finds itself a lot in the frass. And that chitin, when it is used as a fertilizer, along with the frass, it has the ability to mobilize the nutrients for the plants. So a lot of research is being done. I'm not saying that the black soldier fly is probably the golden discovery, but globally there are about 2,000 species of insect that are consumed, about 2,300. Even when we think that Africa has the biggest diversity we only have 500 out of these 2,000. 700 species are in Asia, and 400 of them are in South America. And if you look at each of these insects, there are some nutrients that you don't find, whether you are consuming crickets or you are consuming weevils, like the palm weevils, or you are consuming caterpillars. The type of nutrient that you get for your body are different. So there is it's a gold mine actually, but people have decided to focus on black soldier fly simply because of the environmental benefits and the practicality. Yeah, because so far, edible insects focuses only on wild harvesting. Because a lot of insects have not developed protocol for mass rearing. But the time will come when people will start shifting to new insects, hopefully in the next 10 to 20 years to come. They'll start digging to see some of the insects might have anti-canceric or medicinal properties. They are yet to be discovered because they feed on plants and they biosequester a lot of these phytochemicals. Some of the phytochemicals are beneficial to human body. Okay, and then you have asked me about the plant-based protein. Is there any gap? Yeah, the gap. There are so many gaps. There will be. What happens is that the research is usually demand-driven. You have to, in as much as we are academicians, we are usually into the supply-driven mode. Like we sit in our office or in our class, and then we imagine a certain problem, and we try to solve it. Unfortunately, when we take that solution to the farmers or to the people, we find that they don't need it. But there is also the reverse way, whereby there is a demand-driven mode. So we try to look for a solution to problem that people are encountering. And that's maybe somewhere we will find a lot of these gaps. But if I have to talk about edible insects and this black soldier fly and all that, well, the gap for Africa is mainly when do we come up with medium to high level production facilities, because so far the production is very little. Although Africa has all the advantages compared to Europe and America, because we have a lot of energy, sunlight, we have a lot of young people, labor, and we have a lot of waste that is being generated in Africa. We could have been #1 producers of black soldier fly. Unfortunately, we always find foreign companies coming to settle in Africa to produce black soldier fly. We are yet to absorb the knowledge that is being generated by institutions such as ICIPE is doing one fantastic job, but few years to come, we might not even be in control of these technologies because it will be overtaken by other investors from abroad. And the gap is to equip the government to really support investment and credit to young people to invest in these kind of technologies and provide feed for the chickens and for the fish, for aquaculture and also for horticulture in terms of frass. That's where probably I'm seeing the gap with black soldier fly. But otherwise, all the science has been done so far. And then the third questions about the human environment and the donor funding and agriculture and the focus on the spirit on One Health. The thing is, if you see my presentation, first of all, why we focused on insects, because the impact of insects on our life is far-reaching. Insect affects our life by destroying our crops. We can also eat insects. They transmit disease to our animals and to humans, and they pollinate. I'm new to research doing malaria, but I don't take into account the aspect of technologies that are presented, whether it is IPM, whether it is insect for food and feed, or it is the push-pull technology and fall lamia management. Each of them, I can demonstrate to what extent it contributes to one health, even though the focus was on plant health, but there is some interconnectedness. If you take push-pull, if a farmer implements push-pull very well, for his own personal consumption, but then bacteria can be given to the animals for fodder. Then he's contributing to animal health. But then when these are being slaughtered or are being we are getting milk from these animals, then these animals can contribute to human health through nutrition. Or you can reduce the use of chemicals by having the desmodium repelling the moth. Then you are reducing chemical use, therefore you are contributing to environmental health. And then, in as much as you are contributing to environmental health, you are contributing generally to One Health. So this is a technology that contributes to One Health. If you take the black soldier fly, same thing. You are first to grow crops, and then you are generating income for the farmer. Therefore, you are contributing to One Health. Even though you are touching plant and animal health, you are also contributing to some extent to human health. So that vision, that way of thinking, which is a paradigm shift, is the new way that we need to use now. And you can even extend it and expand it, to a global level, to reduction of greenhouse gas production and all that, So it's limitless, basically. So I'm good?
Thank you, Dr. Salio. We take another 3 questions, if there. 1, 2, 3, in that order.
Thank you, Daktari. Thank you, President. I have 2 questions. One, are there harmful insects to our health and our life? And if so, can we make the deliberate decision to just destroy them? Because a typical case in my village where I come from, Lambwe Valley, tsetse fly has been very harmful, despite a lot of research that has been done in that area. So are there some types of insects that can just be destroyed because they have no value? Typical case is tsetse. Number 2, you talked about data-driven research in insect science. I'm interested in knowing the extent to which you have developed the data, structures and databases about these insects. And is there any gap that we may want to address in terms of data structures, data quality that we may want to work on going forward? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salio, for your presentation and enlightenment. My concern is with the loss of biodiversity that we experience today especially at the local levels. And we know that the loss of biodiversity affects the life of insects and eventually the life of everybody in the world and in our societies. It also impacts food production. A specific example is the recent cases of poor pollination of mangoes and coffee and other foods in Kenya and around the world. For example, even in the UK. So what is your organization and your previous organization, that is ISIPE, doing, especially at the local level with farmers and everybody, to mitigate these challenges so that we retain our biodiversity for the sake of the life of insects that are really important to our lives and for food security? How much information is there with the farmers? How much information is there with the local residents on how the insects are important to them and how they can retain, that they can keep the biodiversity that we really so much depend on? Thank you.
Thank you, Doc, for the presentation. My question is on one of the reasons you gave for the low agricultural production in Africa is weak and obsolete policies. My question is, why would an independent country stick to a weak policy for so long? And do we see this situation changing any soon, where we would have better policies that are able to facilitate agricultural production? Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Okay, Daktari, I come from Bita where ISIPE is, and one of the problems that the community had, which might not be scientific, that during your discovery you would throw these insects to the community, then later on you ask them to come and buy drugs like this one that eats maize plants. How true is this? And during your discovery, do you do it in the laboratory or you go to the wider community? Because that also brought a lot of resistance from our community, that ISIPE came here and with the dudus, once they have studied them, then they release them to the community during weeding and planting. Then now they run to Mbita to go and look for medicine. How true is these rumors? Thank you.
That was the last of the physical questions. We can't hear you. We can't hear Dr. Saliu. But we will post the online questions before you respond. Can I read the online questions? Making agriculture sexy. And I think this term has been used now for the third time during this conference. That's quite a shift in the predominant classical imagery that has dominated classical agriculture. That's a comment. The question is, how do you overcome the scientific language barrier, especially on YouTube? Given that farmers use local languages. So you can respond to all the questions that have been asked.
By Charles Okeyo. Yeah, you know, agriculture has always been depicted as the last job. Most of us think that we are a failure if we find ourselves young and then doing farming. But it is the different perception in other places, like in Europe or in America, or even in South Africa, where we see a lot of young people getting themselves, in agriculture and making huge money, and actually they have all the country. It's just because we, first of all, have made a very bad mistake at the beginning of after independence. We thought loans from the IMF and the World Bank would help us solve our problems. And because of this support, there was no willingness from many countries. I'm not talking about Kenya, but if you go to my country, Senegal, where I come from, and many other countries in West Africa, that, agriculture is summarized in very simple terms. In a country, for instance, if you have a good production for peanuts, that's a good day for the good year. If you have good production of cotton, it's a good year. So all the research, all the scholars have been trained around peanut and cotton. There's no, a willingness to improve or to diversify the system. So agriculture and rural, an old person, an old woman carrying a basket of and a baby in the back, going to the fields, looking undernourished. This has been always the picture. If you look at many magazines, agricultural magazines, that's what you see. But we'd never show you a young guy riding a very beautiful car with a mobile phone, being an investor. And this is what we need to bring now. And it's because we have always been thinking that we have to do agriculture to solve the problem of smallholder farmers. Yet these smallholder farmers, they're illiterate, they live in an environment that is not conducive for agriculture. And there are millions of other people who are educated, who are in the office, who are lawyers, who have other professions, who are academicians, but who have capital, and they are willing to start agriculture. So we need to change this face by the face of agriculture by providing that information that is required on how to start, for instance, a poultry farm, how to start, let's say, a pig farm, etc. So there is more and more dynamic in that direction. If you go to YouTube, you have access to a lot of knowledge in terms of how do you start, for instance, strawberry farm or herbal spice farm, etc., etc. And you find that the people who are behind it are people who graduated from USIU or from Nairobi University or from other universities. So the perception of agriculture is changing. And in as much as in the rural people have issue of languages, nowadays a picture speaks 1,000 words and a video probably speaks 10,000 words. So if you make videos with subtitles or you voice over it with local vernacular, you can convince farmers who are not educated. In fact, in Africa, people are more sensitive. Seeing is believing. If you want to train an African person to do something, you have to show him that it works. You need to demonstrate it. So an African person, you don't show him how to dance a new dance. But if you show him how to dance that new dance, he will dance it exactly the same way. And that is what agriculture is supposed to be. So we don't need to make things now complicated, especially with the expansion of ICT and mobile technology. Now, coming back to the different question, the gentleman from Lamwe who was telling me about tsetse fly and if they need to be eradicated, I believe that insect-based technologies, as I said, you cannot say that there must be, we need to study the epidemiology of the tsetse fly in Lamwe Valley. We all know that ICIPE and several other organizations like KWS have been involved in trying to eradicate it. At some point, it seemed that they have been eradicated using biological control, but there has not been perhaps a follow-up because when we talk about insect-based technologies, we can try as much as to eradicate it, but if the same condition that brought this insect are still prevailing, those insects will continue. So there is need to continue to follow up with a trapping system, with a treatment system, to prevent maybe the life cycle of this insect in order to be successful, which I believe that most of us have failed in that. That is why in that valley, every time you are there, you are always prone to be bitten by those tsetse fly. So it means that institutions like ICP are donor funded. So when the funding is over, the government needs to take over the local government and follow up the activity. Unfortunately, I believe that doesn't happen, and that's why we have. So it is very difficult to say that you want to eradicate a certain insect in a system. It's very difficult to eradicate an insect from a system because there is always this food chain. There's a life cycle where there is an equilibrium that has been established. You can just manage these insects. You can put measures to eradicate it, but those measures have to be sustained over time. Otherwise, they will just come back. Now, there was an issue of data. Yes, there are a lot of databases that are available. The issue is not to have the database. The issue is more about what to do once you have established the database. Because establishing a database and not to use that database is just information that is classified somewhere in a shelf. But how do you add value to that database has been the major question. So for you to be able to do that, you have to ask yourself a certain number of research questions and come up with a hypothesis, and then use some methodological processes to respond to prove yourself right or wrong. For me, I talked about database in the sense of all the technologies that have been developed, they need to be inventoried, and which is something that we have already succeeded to do. We need to define maybe their performance, the key performance indicators, their costs, what do you get when you invest in that technology, etc., which is something that we are yet to complete for all the technology, but some of them are ready to go, like for instance the pheromone traps, the biopesticides, they have been validated, etc. So the database, such kind of database are living documents. They are always there to be constantly, updated, but they are it's a never-ending exercise. But what is important is how do you analyze to make value out of this database? Now, the question on loss of biodiversity, yes. The lady is very correct. I mean, it's a problem with the population growth, with the habitat change, climate change. We lose a lot of biodiversity. Use of chemicals contribute to loss of biodiversity. There have been programs that have been tried to, like for instance, there's one program that I know so well, which is called the Integrated Pest and Pollinator Management. You might be wanting to control your pest, but using same chemicals, you also kill your pollinators. So what do you do in this kind of situation? There have been studies in the mango, avocado, and coffee to first of all try to analyze the pollen that the bees are carrying from the fields to their nests. How much chemicals, what are the chemical residues that are found in those pollen? Are they collecting, glyphosate? Are they collecting, certain things, that are banned, the pyrethroid, etc.? Such kind of information helps to sensitize the farmers to avoid using a certain number of chemicals, to be able to protect both the pollinators while they're controlling the pests. So a lot of research is being done in that field. A lot of work is being done to ban some of the chemicals that are not good for the pollinators or for the environment, yet we protect the crops against the pests. So it is crucial. I think there are many NGOs that are into this business, and a lot of advocacy, a lot of lobbying is taking place all over, even at the African Union level. So I'm not going to promise you that it's going to be resolved, but the loss of biodiversity is being declared almost all over the world. But you have to know that Africa is the continent where we are using less chemical compared to the rest of the world. We still have a chance to restore our environment if we continue to sensitize people to replant, to prevent certain practices, to continue building capacity. I don't believe that entomology is what it is. The knowledge about insects, the awareness about pollinators and the environment was not like this, 20 years ago. People are now more informed about the environment and are more cautious, and this has to continue, to develop curriculums in entomology, for instance, start training children, developing curriculum that starts from primary school, sensitizing the young children about the insects, the role they play, and how they contribute to the food chain, and the relationship between insects, animals, plants, and environment, etc. And this maybe can bring a new generation of people who are more environmentally, cautious. Now, there was a question about agricultural productivity in Africa and the situation. Well, agricultural productivity in Africa, the reason there are so many things. Those that I listed are just too small. But we need to create sort of like an environment where there is trade, because most of us have, our agricultural system is inherited from the colonial times, and there have been little effort to really to adjust it and to change it. And most of the policies that we have been putting in place are inward looking instead of being policies that are open. I can give you an example, because maybe I'm more positioned to give you such example because I am from West Africa and I had the chance to live in Kenya for more than 10 years, and then South Africa, and now I'm in Central Africa. So my observation is that a lot of commodities that we produce in West Africa do not come to East Africa, or they come to East Africa through a third-party investor who happens maybe to be Asian or European. Likewise, commodities from East Africa do not reach West Africa directly. Very difficult. It's always happened through a third-party, investor who transforms the products. Let's say, for instance, coffee, transforms it like Nestle, and then gets it to West Africa. But there is no connection directly from the producer in Kenya to the consumer in West Africa. And that's when that will happen within the context of Africa Free Trade Area, then we will be talking about serious market, because what farmers need currently is the guarantee that if they produce, that production will be consumed. But currently, the farmers are just producing and they're not making much from the production they make. Let's say, for instance, the coffee business is going down in Kenya. Most of the land in Kiambu, for instance, and so many areas is being sold for real estate simply because the farmers are not making money from the coffee production. It requires a lot of investment, you don't harvest much, and you don't make money out of it, so they rather sell it for real estate. But if the farmers were aware that the coffee they produce would be consumed in West Africa, then they would invest to produce it, and because they know they will get their return back. So I can give several examples of commodities like that. So we need to open up the space, because we are about 1.2 billion people on the continent, and we can exchange commodities. There's a lot of market available for our farmers, but unfortunately, this market is benefiting other people outside of the continent rather than the Africans themselves. I think that's the perspective that I can give you now that I'm working for the African Union. But now, there is another question on, I think I've answered all the questions. Have I skipped one? I started with the one online, and I end up with the policies and the discovery for a wider community. I think that was the last bit of the question. So, it's okay?
Very good. thank you very much for your participation in this conference and for the enlightening presentation that you have given. We, ladies and gentlemen, we want to appreciate Dr. Saliu with 5 factorial clap. Dr. Saliu, regardez ici. This is how we appreciate people. Can we open and prepare? 5, start. Asante sana, asante sana. So enjoy your day. From here we are going for a tea break. Then we come back for 2 presentations before we head to Thimli Chohinga. Thank you, Dr. Saliu. Have a nice time.